Evening, everyone. And I think there's a couple of people whose names I don't recognize. So if you are new here tonight, welcome. Thanks for joining us. For those of you who are new and you sat through the meditation and the chanting part, you've now done the most important part of the evening. My talk is a little bit, we call it sometimes Dharma candy. It's something we do to help us have inspiration to practice. It's a way of affirming our practice, of connecting with practice. And that's all very, very important. And the actual doing of it is what's most important. So I guess I'll start off at the end and encourage you, whatever you take from this talk, bring it to your practice, bring it to your not knowing mind, bring it to your breath, bring it to your daily life. What is this? What am I? So this talk, for some reason, has been kind of particularly difficult for me to figure out what I want to talk about. There's a lot going on in my life. Some stressful things have been arising that I'm dealing with. So just to put it out, I can sense a little, well, you can't see my hand. I should just move my camera for a second. I feel a bit of a well of anxiety in this area at this moment. So if you hear it in my voice, it's real. Some of it is just about lurching into the unknown, how this talk is going to play out. And some of it is just accumulation of everyday life. But I think I'm saying it just to start off with the reality of our human condition. We have this great idea about Buddhism and Zen, and we're going to get something. And often the idea is once we get something, we're done. We've crossed the line, we got it, and now all we do is live in bliss because we have it. And I don't know if you individually, each one of you, have that view. I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere secretly inside there isn't that desire to have that one moment in time where all of the difficulties, all of the confusion, all of the stress falls away and everything is perfect. Now, Buddhism has a space for that. Everything is perfect just as it is now. So if we can hold the mind that this is perfect, then we're free. It's really our wanting things to be different, which creates some of the tension that make things more difficult for us. So last night at about 10 o'clock at night, it was the end of the day, and I suppose through the pandemic, my wife Sheridan and I have kind of gotten into the habit of watching something, some entertainment at the end of the evening. And I've been percolating in my mind what I was going to talk about. So at one point during this show that we were watching, or this documentary that we were watching, I turned to my wife Sheridan and I said, well, what really should I talk about tomorrow? And so you understand this well enough. We were watching a documentary about a deceased comedian, American comedian named Don Rickles. Many of you may know him, some of you may not, so I will explain a little bit about him. But there was a reason we were watching this video, which I'll get into, and when Sheridan said that to me, it was almost the most preposterous thought. How do I bring in Don Rickles to a Zen talk? And I enjoyed the challenge. Sometimes when we've been in Mexico before, and in Mexico, when I lead a retreat in Mexico, they ask me to talk every day, and then every evening I have to answer questions. There's a lot to talk, a lot of talk. So by the third or the fourth day, I'm sometimes like, I've said everything. What else is there to say? And sometimes I'll turn to Sheridan and I'll say, give me one word. And what I think, if I remember, one time she, I don't know, I'm thinking she said repentance, but it might not have been that. And then I literally went down the stairs and gave a talk on that. So she said Don Rickles, and I thought, okay, I don't have much else. That's a good place to start. So before I get into who Don Rickles is, I will explain why we were watching the video. Don Rickles, like I said, was a comedian. I think the documentary showed us he was born in 1926. He was of my parents' generation, but I see a lot of nodding heads, a pop and popular figure throughout the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and really even into the 2000s. It so happened that my mother's cousin, who she was very close to, married a man, and this man ended up being Don Rickles' business manager. He handled his money. So he was a figure in our family. It was as if he was part of the family. And my family liked him quite a lot. I detested his humor. So let me say a little bit about Don Rickles. Don Rickles' comedy routine is to insult everyone. Don Rickles' comedy routine is to pick whatever, like in one scene in this documentary, he came on stage and he was already an old man at this point. And he looked down at somebody and he said, where are you from? Or what's your heritage? And the guy said German. And Don Rickles had fought in the World War II and he was Jewish. So he began to insult the guy, calling him a Nazi, doing Nazi kind of marching on stage. Then there was a Chinese person that he started talking to, and he called him a chink. And then there was a Japanese person, and he started to wanting to kill him because the Japanese had wanted to kill him when he was fighting in the war. Everything is an insult. Everything is abusive. And the audience goes wild. He was apparently, especially in listening to the other comedians talk about him, he had something magical about him. He could push to the edge, do what nobody else could do, say what nobody else would say, and get away with it. And he made a good career out of that. And we were watching and cringing and laughing at the same time. So that's Don Rickles. Now go back to myself as a 16-year-old. I was waking up to something. And I was disgusted, literally, by the routine. And I could barely tolerate to watch his act. I remember one time going with my family to watch him perform live, and I could barely stay in my seat. At the time, that was the late 60s that I'm talking about, the world was changing. We were starting to understand the pain and the suffering that was caused by the mindset that his comedy was basking in, if you will. And my whole world was opening up at that time. Honestly, that's around the time I discovered meditation. It's around the time that I started being involved in a youth group that did sensitivity trainings and was quite psychological. So I was learning about the I guess what I would think of as the damage caused by that kind of mind. And what I ended up feeling was a deep sense of alienation in many ways from my family, which I'm still very close to, but also very different from. But at that time, it was mostly the alienation. And it was actually an important marker in my, even though I'm a layperson, as I look back on my journey as a Zen practitioner, there's a mark in that time period where, in a sense, I began to leave home. And in many ways, in Buddhist mythology, if you will, leaving home is the first step toward awakening. Now, we don't leave home until we have some sense that there's a reason to leave home. So actually, leaving home isn't the first step. The first step is for me, I suppose you could say it was the accumulation of discomfort. I suddenly felt out of sync. I mean, it wasn't sudden. In many ways, I realized I was out of sync back probably when I was 9 or 10 years old. But it quickened as I got older. And the culture was also quickening. So it was a marker of leaving home. And when one leaves home or jumps over the wall to start wondering, what am I? What is this? If what I've been used to is not who I truly am, then what am I? And if you can hear that, what am I, is the fundamental Zen question. Zen is actually much more about questions than it is about answers. We're not really looking to answer the question, what am I? We're using the question, what am I, to shake us out of our conventional view. If I don't know who I am, then I need to pay attention. Then I need to begin a search. Then I need to be more uncomfortable in that not knowing. I have to be willing to face the discomfort. I don't think as a teenager I was thinking in those ways, but I have a distinct memory of being at a big party in a public venue. And I said to somebody, I just want to know who I am. And I think about that, and I remember saying this to the group before, that's not an unusual thing for a teenager to ask. But I'm almost 69 years old right now, and I'm still asking the very same question. I don't think I've ever answered it. I don't think there is a conceptual answer to it. But the question leaves us fresh, open, and alive. And that is Zen. Zen is not a prescriptive practice that tells us how to be. Zen is a practice that we immerse ourselves in to find ways of expressing the deepest aspects of our nature. To, in a way, we can say, to step out from behind the barriers that we make for ourselves and to be more free. I was talking with somebody today, and they were telling me about this image they had of this big wall that separated them from everyone else. And they hid behind that wall, and it protected them. And they were quite shy and introverted, and it was a comfortable place to be. But as his professional life grew, his shyness was very counterproductive. So he started to investigate his shyness. And he told me that he had this experience of, as he was looking at the wall that seemed so big, he was able to get to the edge of it and look around it. And what he realized that the wall that he thought was made of stone was actually papier mâché, and that he could thrust his hand right through it. And the wall didn't really exist. And I thought, oh, what a beautiful image. We build these walls. We build these ways of living. We build protections for ourselves in order to, we hope, survive and be safe. But in that play, with those walls, we limit. We put limits on the infinite. You've heard me say there's a line in our temple rules that says, if you break the walls of self, already infinite in time and space. That's really what I'm talking about. We construct these walls that are actually just made by our own thinking, and then we use that protection, but that protection ends up shutting us down, making us small. And the Buddha's liberation pointed to the infinite. The Buddha's enlightenment showed him that he was the universe. The universe was him. And that means that he and everything in this universe were one thing. Imagine that. Your body and the seat that you're sitting on are not two. We think there's like a separation point between our butts and the seat that we're sitting on. But where is it? Feel down there right now. Is there really a space? Is there really a difference between the seat you're sitting on and the person that you are? Of course, conventionally, we can say there's this very, very thin gap. But really, experientially, if we really look into it, things are different than they seem. And our Zen practice teaches us, look inward. Look inward, but also look outward and question, what is this? Is it really what you think it is? So we're always questioning our assumptions. So, as usual, this is taking longer than I thought. There's one more part to this talk I want to weave in. I'll try to do it quickly. So I went to bed last night saying, okay, I'm going to give a talk about Don Rickles. So you just got it. So in a moment, just before falling asleep, the thought entered, oh, it's Buddha's birthday. And I thought, I'm the Zen teacher here. I should probably talk about Buddha's birthday. So now I had another problem. Not only did I say I was going to talk about Don Rickles, but I have to bring in Buddha's birthday to this talk. So here's my attempt to do that. The story goes that Buddha was born on January, February, March, April, the 8th day of the 4th month. So in Asia, Buddha's birthday is going to be celebrated on May 8th this year. That it's the 8th, that just lines up on our calendar. It doesn't have to be our calendar's 8th day, but on the lunar calendar, that's Buddha's birthday. In the Western calendar, Buddha's birthday is April 8th every year. So already we know that Buddha's birthday is not Buddha's birthday. Because first of all, the 8th day of the 4th month on the lunar calendar is always moving around. It's not the same day, according to our calendar. And we know that our calendar is quite arbitrary. So Buddha really wasn't born on April 8th, and yet that's the day we celebrate Buddha's birthday. So because we celebrate Buddha's birthday on April 8th, does that make April 8th Buddha's birthday? In our minds, it does, actually. At least in my mind, it does. It takes a moment to realize that he actually wasn't born on this day. This is the day we give to commemorate his birth, which is fair enough. So the story of Buddha's birth, I'm not going to get into the whole story, but I think for our purposes here, one important part is that Buddha wasn't the result of a vaginal birth. The Buddha's mother grabbed onto the limb of a tree, and the way the story goes, the Buddha popped out of her hip. I don't know if it was an immaculate conception, but it was an immaculate birth. So, what does that mean? We always say that the beauty of Buddhism is that Buddha was a human being. His experience was our experience. That Buddha could attain enlightenment means that we can attain enlightenment. Because as I said, we and the Buddha's experience was that he was the whole universe. That includes each one of us and more. So in our Kangan practice, we sometimes ask, does a dog have Buddha nature? Sometimes we ask, does a cat have Buddha nature? We'll sometimes ask, what is Buddha nature? And this is a very wide gate question. So Buddha's not just one thing. So how can we say Buddha was born at a particular day and time? So if Buddha wasn't born at a particular day and time, it actually means that Buddha is always being born. Buddha didn't have a birthday. Buddha has a birth moment. This very moment is Buddha's birth moment. This very moment. When I said it the second time, it was a different moment than the first time. Each moment is Buddha's birthday. When I asked Sheridan, what should I talk about? And she said Don Rickles, that was the birth of this Dharma Talk. Before that moment, this Dharma Talk had no shape and no form. Literally, I was searching around for that. And when Sheridan said Don Rickles, suddenly this Dharma Talk was born. I had a busy day today, and I didn't have a lot of time to organize my thoughts. So in full transparency, you might have noticed during the meditation, my camera went off. And I took that time to take some notes and write something about this Dharma Talk. And it's now 5 minutes after 8. I should be done with my Dharma Talk in a minute. And I've gotten to about a third of it. So the Dharma Talk that was born last night is not the Dharma Talk that I'm giving. But without the Dharma Talk being born last night, I couldn't have given this Dharma Talk. So birth doesn't imply, I don't know what to call it, experience after birth. It's one moment. Actually, each moment of this Dharma Talk is a new Dharma Talk. And though I do try to plan my Dharma Talks out, in many ways, in my experience giving the Dharma Talks, the most alive parts are the parts that I had no idea were going to come out. And what's the most exciting thing to me giving a Dharma Talk is the moment that I say something that I've never thought before. That it was a thought that I've never had. It was some new thing was given birth in this very moment. So I think I'll wrap up bringing it all together by saying that Zen is about being present at the moment of birth. Zen is about being alive at the origin point, and which means for each very moment, each moment is a birth, and our practice is pulling us towards aliveness and freshness in the very moment we find ourselves in. So often, we defend ourselves against the moment. We hide behind the walls. We construct ways to separate ourselves from the moment because the moment is too much. It's like we can't handle it. So in a way, our Zen practice is about finding the way to handle the moment so we don't have to retreat. We don't have to shy away. We can fully expose ourselves. Maybe in the language of Dogen, we can burn ourselves up completely in the moment so that what appears in the next moment is new and fresh. The image that Dogen Zenji would say is that firewood is firewood, ash is ash. In our minds, firewood burns and becomes ash. But firewood has its own reality, and ash has its own reality. Moment to moment to moment to moment, each thing is being born. The Buddha's birthday is this very moment, and this, and this. And our practice leads to bring our practice of great doubt, great question, great faith, great courage are the tools we have. And one last reminder, the very practice of bringing our, you may not know this, but I was here last week. Sheridan's computer was on and I was sitting in the background and I listened to the talk, but you didn't see that I was here. And I know there was some discussion about technique versus practice. I want to bring those two pieces together here at the end. You can call what we do while we're sitting technique, but what we're doing while we're sitting is practice. It's not a technique we use to do practice. It is practice. And it is true that there are many, many, many different kinds of practices. But we start with the breath. And as Karen talked about last week, I talk about this a lot. Experientially for me, connecting with the breath, bringing the breath deeply into the lower abdomen, and allowing that to be the foundation of our practice, it allows us to gain some stability. If we can rely on the stability of our center, then we less need to build constructions to keep us separated from the world. So in many ways, our formal practice of bowing and chanting and sitting, and especially the sitting, although actually all of them, it's a little bit like tilling the ground. We're softening the ground so that when the seed is ready, it can be born. So with each breath, with each phrase of the chant, with each motion of the bow, we're actually tilling the soil. We're softening the rigidity that we've grown to use as a way of protecting ourselves. And with the stability of our lower abdomen, We can have faith and confidence that I may get knocked down, but I know how to get up. So we say in Zen, fall down 7 times, get up 8 times. Just that's great effort. So our practice is it's not teaching us, it's helping us embody the strength, the openness, and the compassion to be able to meet the moment and to be able to use that strength, openness, and compassion as we interact with the universe to do our small part, to maybe make things a little better, maybe to bring a little clarity, a little love, a little peace, a little understanding. I sound a little bit like Elvis Costello here, but then I'll say, what's so funny about that? But anyway, the point is, it's easy to make this seem like a cliche. It's easy to stereotype. But our practice is doing it. Be alive, do it, and taste the results for ourselves. Thank you very much.